The crystal chandelier above table 7 had been flickering all night, casting fractured shadows across the white tablecloth like broken promises. I'd noticed it during my double shift at Élysée, the kind of restaurant where a single entree cost more than my weekly rent. My feet ached in the cheap flats I'd worn through at the heels, and the constant smile I'd painted on felt like it might crack and fall off in pieces onto the marble floor. "Refill his water, girl. Don't just stand there." Marcel's hiss cut through the classical music floating from hidden speakers. He didn't use my name. After 3 months, I wasn't sure he knew it. I was just another faceless server in black and white, invisible to men in $1,000 suits who discussed things in hushed tones while I poured their wine. I approached table 7 with the water pitcher, my reflection warping in its silver surface. 3 men sat in the private alcove, but only one commanded the space. He sat with his back to the wall. I'd noticed that immediately, how he'd repositioned his chair before sitting, how his eyes had swept the room's exits before he'd even opened the menu. Dark hair touched with silver at the temples, a jaw that looked carved from marble, and a stillness that made the air around him feel heavier. Dangerous. The word whispered through my mind uninvited. His suit probably cost more than my car, if my car hadn't died last month. A thin scar traced his right cheekbone, barely visible but somehow making him more compelling, like a crack in a masterpiece that proved it was real. When I'd taken their order, his voice had been low, accented with something Mediterranean, and he'd looked through me like I was made of glass. I preferred being invisible. Invisible meant safe. "Water, sir?" I kept my eyes down as I reached for his glass, the one closest to his right hand. My fingers brushed the stem, and that's when I saw it. The faintest residue on the rim, almost imperceptible, like someone had run a finger dipped in oil around the edge, but it wasn't oil. The texture was wrong, slightly crystalline where the light hit it. My breath caught. I'd seen something similar once, years ago, when my mother was still alive, before the cancer, before the medical bills that had swallowed our lives. She'd been a nurse. She'd shown me pictures in her textbooks, warned me about things that could kill in doses so small you wouldn't taste them until it was too late. The man was lifting the glass. I didn't think. My hand shot out, knocking the glass sideways. Water cascaded across the pristine tablecloth, soaking the bread basket, dripping onto his lap. Time stopped. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. One of his companions, a bull of a man with a broken nose, half rose from his seat, his hand moving inside his jacket. "I'm so sorry." The words tumbled out too fast, too panicked. "I'm so clumsy. I'll get you another glass immediately. Please forgive me." The man with the scar raised one hand, barely a movement. But the bull sat back down immediately, those eyes, cold as a winter ocean, fixed on me for the first time, really seeing me. My heart hammered against my ribs. I grabbed the fallen glass, my fingers shaking, and reached for a clean one from the tray behind me. "Here. This one is fresh. I'll pour you new water right now." I filled the new glass, setting it beside his plate, but as I picked up the contaminated one, wrapped in a napkin, something made me hesitate. Instead of heading to the kitchen, I slipped it into my apron pocket. Evidence. The word came from nowhere. Evidence of what? I didn't know, but every instinct I had screamed that throwing it away would be a mistake. "You're trembling." His voice cut through my panic, soft as silk over steel. I'm very sorry about the mess, sir. What's your name?" I blinked. In 3 months, no one had asked. "Emma, sir." "Emma." He repeated it slowly, like he was tasting the syllables. "Look at me, Emma." I forced my eyes up. His face was unreadable, but something flickered in those dark eyes. Calculation, perhaps, or suspicion. Behind him, the third man at the table, silver-haired with a priest's collar, watched me with unsettling intensity. "How did you know?" The question was barely above a whisper, but it hit me like a shout. "Know what, sir? I just slipped. Dante." The bull interrupted in heavily accented English. "We should leave. Now." The man, Dante, didn't move. "Who sent you here?" "No one sent me anywhere. I just needed the job." My voice cracked. "I don't understand what you're asking." His hand moved to his jacket pocket, and I stopped breathing. But instead of a weapon, he withdrew a business card, setting it on the table beside his untouched plate. Black cardstock with silver lettering I couldn't read from where I stood. "Marcel!" The restaurant owner's voice boomed across the space. I turned to see him storming toward us, his face purple with rage. "What have you done, you stupid girl? These are our most important guests." "It was an accident," I whispered, but Marcel wasn't listening. "You're fired. Get out. Now." "She stays." Dante's words weren't loud, but they carried absolute authority. Marcel froze mid-gesture, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "In fact, she'll be serving only my table from now on. I trust that won't be a problem?" It wasn't a question. Marcel's face went from purple to white. "Of course, Mr. Caruso. Whatever you wish." "Emma, apologize properly to Mr. Caruso," but Dante stood, buttoning his jacket with deliberate precision. The bull and the priest rose with him. "We're leaving. Emma, that card. Keep it safe. You'll be hearing from me." They moved toward the exit, and I noticed for the first time the two other men in dark suits positioned near the door, earpieces visible, hands clasped in front of them. Security. How had I missed them? Dante paused at the threshold, turning back to look at me one last time. The expression on his face made ice crawl down my spine. It wasn't gratitude. It was possession. Then they were gone, and I was left standing in the wreckage of Table 7, soaked napkins in my hands and a poisoned glass burning a hole in my apron pocket. Marcel grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "What the hell just happened? Who is that man to you?" "I don't know him, I swear. Mr. Caruso doesn't make jokes. If he says you serve his table, you serve his table. Do you understand? You do exactly what he wants when he wants it, or we're all dead." The word echoed in my head as Marcel released me and stalked away. I looked down at the business card still on the table. My fingers shook as I picked it up. The silver lettering seemed to shimmer in the flickering light from the dying chandelier. Dante Caruso, import, export, no phone number, no address. Just a name that made the other servers whisper when they thought I couldn't hear. Just a title that meant nothing and everything. And below, handwritten in ink so black it looked like dried blood, Villa Rosa, midnight. Come alone. The glass in my pocket felt heavy as a stone. I thought about throwing it away, about running home to my cramped studio apartment, and pretending this night had never happened, but I knew with sudden, terrible certainty that running was no longer an option. Dante Caruso had looked at me, really looked at me, and seen something he wanted, and men like him always got what they wanted. I worked the rest of my shift in a fog, going through the motions while my mind raced. Every time the door opened, I jumped. Every shadow seemed to hide watching eyes. The other servers avoided me now, as if whatever I'd touched might be contagious. Only Marie, the older French woman who worked the bar, pulled me aside near closing. "You don't know what you've done, Cherie," she whispered, her lined face full of pity. "Dante Caruso is not a man you want noticing you. Who is he?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Who is he? He's death in a handmade suit. He's the reason half the police force looks the other way. He's—" She stopped, glancing around nervously. "Just forget tonight happened. Burn that card. Don't go to wherever he told you to go." But even as she said it, I knew I wouldn't follow her advice. Because in my pocket, wrapped in a napkin, was proof that someone had tried to kill Dante Caruso, and I was the only one who knew. The question wasn't whether I would go to Villa Rosa. The question was whether I would survive it. The address wasn't hard to find. Villa Rosa sat in the hills above the city like a crown on a tyrant's head, visible from almost anywhere if you knew where to look. I'd passed it 100 times on the bus route to work, always wondering what kind of people lived behind those iron gates, in that sprawling estate where lights glowed warm against the night sky like captured stars. Now I knew. Monsters lived there. Beautiful, dangerous monsters who could end my life with a gesture. I should have stayed home. Should have burned the card like Marie said, flushed the contaminated glass down the toilet, and pretended Dante Caruso was just another wealthy customer who'd leave a generous tip and never return. But at 11:30, I found myself on a bus climbing into the hills, wearing the only dress I owned that wasn't my work uniform, a simple navy blue thing I'd bought at a thrift store for my mother's funeral. The glass sat in my purse, still wrapped in the napkin. Evidence. Insurance. A death sentence in crystal form. The bus dropped me at the base of the long driveway. Wrought iron gates stood sentinel, cameras perched like ravens on the stone pillars. I approached on foot, my heels clicking against the pavement too loud in the midnight silence. Before I could reach for the intercom, the gate swung open with a low groan. They'd been watching, waiting. The driveway curved through manicured gardens that probably cost more to maintain than I made in a year. Solar lights illuminated rose bushes heavy with blooms that perfumed the cool air, their sweetness almost cloying. The main house rose 3 stories, all creamstone and arched windows, lit from within like a jewel box. A fountain dominated the circular drive, water cascading over marble angels frozen in eternal prayer. 2 men in dark suits materialized from the shadows as I approached the front steps. One was the bull from the restaurant. Up close, his broken nose looked like it had been reset badly, probably more than once. The other was younger, with cold eyes and hands that moved to pat me down before I could protest. "Arms up," he ordered in accented English. "I'm not armed." "Arms." "Up," I complied, face burning as his hands moved efficiently over my body. He found my purse, rifled through it. His fingers paused on the wrapped glass. Our eyes met. He pulled it out slowly, holding it up to the light from the house. "What's this?" "Evidence," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "From tonight. That's why I'm here." The bull spoke into a radio in rapid Italian. A response crackled back. He gestured toward the door. "Dante will see you. Don't make any sudden moves. Don't touch anything. Don't speak unless he asks you a question directly." The entrance hall made me feel like I'd stepped into a museum. Marble floors polished to mirrors, a grand staircase that split in 2 directions, and paintings on the walls that looked old enough to be in actual museums. A crystal chandelier, not flickering, perfectly maintained, cast prismatic light across surfaces that gleamed with care and wealth. My shoes squeaked on the marble. I wanted to disappear into the floor. The bull led me through corridors that seemed to go on forever, past rooms glimpsed through half-open doors, a library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, a dining room with a table that could seat 20, a study with dark wood and the scent of old leather and cigars. Finally, we stopped before double doors of carved wood that depicted some classical scene I didn't recognize. He knocked twice. A voice from within called out in Italian. The doors opened. Dante Caruso stood before a wall of windows overlooking the city, hands clasped behind his back, still wearing the suit from dinner, but with his jacket removed and his sleeves rolled to his elbows. Even in this relaxed state, he radiated controlled power. He didn't turn as I entered, but I knew he was aware of every movement I made. The room was an office, I realized. A massive desk dominated one side, covered in papers and multiple phones. Leather chairs faced a fireplace where flames crackled despite the mild temperature outside. Bookshelves lined another wall, and I caught titles in Italian, English, French. A man who spoke multiple languages. A man who read philosophy and history while running an empire built on violence. "Leave us," Dante said softly. "Wait outside." The bull hesitated. "Dante, we haven't verified. If she wanted me dead, I would be dead already." He finally turned, those winter ocean eyes finding mine across the room. "Isn't that right, Emma?" My throat was too dry to speak. I nodded. "You brought the glass." It wasn't a question. He'd been listening to the radio exchange. "Put it on my desk." I crossed the room on unsteady legs, placing my purse on the dark leather surface. He moved closer, not touching me, but standing near enough that I could smell his cologne. Something expensive and dark, cedar and spice. His fingers extracted the wrapped glass with careful precision. "Do you know what was on this rim?" he asked, unwrapping it slowly. I think it was poison, some kind of toxin, ricin." He held the glass up to the firelight, examining the residue. "Extracted from castor beans, tasteless, odorless, causes organ failure within days. By the time symptoms appear, it's too late for treatment. A professional's choice." He set the glass down and turned to face me fully. "How did you know?" "I didn't. Not for certain. I just I struggled to find words. My mother was a nurse. Before she died, she taught me things. About poisons, about what to watch for. I saw the residue on the rim and something felt wrong, so I just reacted. Just reacted. He repeated my words with something that might have been amusement. Do you have any idea what you did tonight, Emma? I spilled water on an important customer? You saved my life. He moved to the desk, pressing a button on one of the phones, and in doing so, you painted a target on your back the size of this house. The blood drained from my face. What? Whoever poisoned that glass is now wondering why I'm still alive. They were watching, certainly. They saw you switch the glasses. They saw me leave unharmed, which means... The door burst open. The priest from the restaurant entered, followed by two other men I hadn't seen before. One in an expensive suit that strained over his bulk, the other thin and nervous-looking with wire-rimmed glasses. They all started speaking in Italian at once, voices rising in argument. Dante raised one hand. Silence fell instantly. English. He said quietly, "We have a guest." The priest turned to look at me for the first time. Really look at me. His eyes were kind but shrewd. "This is the girl? The waitress? This is Emma. Emma, this is Father Antonio, my consigliere. The large gentleman is Marco, my head of security. And the one who looks like he's about to have a heart attack is Luca, who was supposed to taste everything that came to our table tonight." Luca went even paler, if that was possible. "Dante, I swear, I don't know how it happened doesn't matter right now." Dante's voice remained soft, but something in it made Luca flinch. "What matters is that someone got close enough to poison my drink. Someone who knew where I'd be, when I'd be there, and had access to that table before we arrived." "An inside job," Marco rumbled. "Has to be. Restaurant staff, one of the suppliers, maybe someone in the kitchen. Or one of our own people," Father Antonio added quietly. "Someone who knew your schedule, Dante. Someone who could arrange for you to be at Élysée tonight." The implications hung in the air like smoke. I stood frozen, suddenly understanding how deep I'd waded into waters that would drown me. "The girl witnessed nothing," Marco said, looking at me with calculation in his eyes. "She can't identify anyone, doesn't know anything about our operations. We should pay her well and send her home with a warning to forget tonight ever happened." "She kept the glass," Dante said. "She recognized poison, and instead of panicking or running to the police, she brought it here, to me." "Why?" The question was directed at me, 4 pairs of eyes fixed on my face. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to meet Dante's gaze. "Because going to the police would have been useless. Men like you..." I stopped, reconsidered my words. "Men with your kind of power, the police don't touch them, and whoever tried to kill you, they would have known I saw something. They would have come for me eventually. My only chance was to come here first, to prove that I'm not a threat, that I'm on your side. Are you?" His head tilted slightly. "On my side? I don't even know what side that is. I just know that I'm a waitress who can barely make rent, and you're... whatever you are. If keeping you alive keeps me alive, then yes, I'm on your side." Silence fell. Father Antonio laughed suddenly, a warm sound that seemed out of place in the tension. "She's smart, this one, and honest. Refreshing." "She's a liability," Marco countered. "Anyone who saw her at the restaurant..." "Will assume she's my new mistress," Dante interrupted smoothly. "Unremarkable. Expected, even. A man in my position taking an interest in a beautiful young woman causes no suspicion." My face burned. It's not a proposition, Emma. It's a cover story. Starting tomorrow, you'll be seen with me publicly. At restaurants, events, anywhere I go. You'll live here, in the guest house. Marco's men will provide security. In exchange, you'll tell us everything you remember about tonight. Every person you saw, every detail, no matter how small. And if I refuse? His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Then I send you home tonight, and whoever poisoned that glass finds you within a week. Maybe 2, if you're lucky and smart about hiding. But they will find you, Emma, and they won't be as merciful as I am. Merciful? The word escaped before I could stop it. You're blackmailing me. I'm protecting you. There's a difference. He moved closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Someone tried to kill me tonight. They'll try again. And until I know who and why, everyone connected to this evening is in danger. That includes you. So yes, you can call it blackmail if it makes you feel better about the choice. But the reality is simple. You're safest here, under my protection, playing the role of my companion, or you're dead within days. My hands were shaking again. I clasped them together, trying to maintain some dignity. What about my apartment? My things? My job? Marco will retrieve whatever you need. As for your job, you won't be returning to Élysée. I'll ensure you're compensated far better than whatever Marcel was paying you. I don't want your money. Then what do you want? The question was genuine, curious. Everyone wants something, Emma. What is it you want? To survive. To not end up like my mother, dying slowly in a hospital room that smelled of disinfectant and despair. To matter to someone. To be seen as more than invisible. But I couldn't say any of that. Not to this man whose eyes seemed to read thoughts I hadn't formed yet. I want to know I'm safe, I finally said. I want to know that helping you tonight wasn't the worst mistake of my life. Something shifted in his expression. Too quick to read. You have my word. No harm will come to you while you're under my protection. And when I'm not, when this is over and you've found whoever did this? He smiled then, but it didn't reach his eyes. Let's solve the mystery of who wants me dead first. Then we'll discuss your freedom. It wasn't an answer. It was a prison sentence wrapped in silk. Father Antonio stepped forward, his priest's collar somehow making him look more dangerous rather than less. The girl needs rest. It's late, and she's had a traumatic evening. Marco, show her to the guest house. Make sure it's secure. Dante nodded slowly, not taking his eyes off me. We'll talk more tomorrow. There's much to discuss. I was dismissed. Marco's hand on my elbow guided me toward the door, and I went without protest because my legs felt like water and my mind was spinning with everything that had just happened. At the threshold, I looked back. Dante stood in the firelight, his face half in shadow, holding the poisoned glass like it was made of spun gold rather than death. Our eyes met across the space. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For my life." Before I could respond, Marco pulled me into the corridor. The doors closed with a soft click that sounded like the ceiling of a tomb. The guest house was larger than my entire apartment building. Marco led me down a stone path lined with solar lights, past the main villa to a smaller structure that still managed to be 3 times the size of any place I'd ever lived. White stucco walls, terracotta roof tiles, and windows with actual shutters that looked functional rather than decorative. He unlocked the door with a key from his pocket, stepping inside first to check the rooms while I stood on the threshold like a vampire waiting for an invitation. "Clear," he grunted, returning to hand me the key. "Alarm code is 4782. Don't open the door for anyone except Dante or myself. There are cameras on all approaches. We'll be watching. Kitchen is stocked. Bedroom upstairs. Bathroom attached. Don't try to leave the property. Am I a guest or a prisoner?" His expression didn't change. "Both. Get some sleep. Tomorrow starts early." Then he was gone, footsteps crunching on gravel as he disappeared back toward the main house. I stood alone in the doorway, my purse clutched like a shield, staring into a space that smelled of lavender and lemon polish. Slowly, I stepped inside and closed the door, engaging the lock and the alarm with shaking fingers. The main room was all cream and gold. A sofa that looked too expensive to sit on, a fireplace with a mantel decorated with fresh flowers, a kitchenette with marble counters and appliances I didn't recognize. French doors opened onto a small patio, but heavy curtains had been drawn across them. I checked anyway, confirming they were locked, then moved through the space like a ghost, touching surfaces to prove they were real. Upstairs, the bedroom made me want to cry. A massive 4-poster bed dominated the space, dressed in white linens that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The bathroom had a clawfoot tub, heated floors, and towels so soft they felt like clouds. Someone had already placed toiletries on the counter, expensive brands I'd only seen in magazines. I caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized myself. My dark hair had come loose from its bun, falling around a face too pale, with eyes too wide. I looked haunted. Hunted. I was both. Sleep didn't come easily. I lay in that enormous bed, staring at shadows on the ceiling, replaying everything that had happened. The glass. The poison. Dante's eyes when he'd looked at me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve. The way he'd moved, all controlled violence wrapped in expensive fabric. The casual way he'd discussed my death as an inevitability if I didn't comply with his demands. You're safest here, under my protection. Protection. The word tasted like ash. This wasn't protection. It was ownership. He'd claimed me the moment I'd knocked that glass from his hand, marked me as his in front of witnesses who would spread the word through whatever dark networks men like him operated. I was his mistress now, whether I wanted to be or not, his possession, his responsibility, his prisoner. When dawn finally crept through the curtains, I gave up on sleep and showered, using the expensive products that smelled of jasmine and vanilla. My funeral dress was wrinkled, the only clothing I had. I put it back on anyway, armor of a sort, and went downstairs to find the kitchen already occupied. A woman stood at the counter, arranging pastries on a plate. She was older, maybe 50, with gray streaking her dark hair and kind eyes that assessed me with surprising warmth. "Ah, you're awake. Good. I'm Rosa. I manage the house for Mr. Caruso." Her English carried a heavy Italian accent. "I brought breakfast. You must be hungry." I wasn't. My stomach was twisted in knots. But I nodded anyway, letting her guide me to a small table by the window. She poured coffee from a silver pot, added cream without asking, and pushed the pastries toward me with maternal insistence. "Eat. You're too thin. Mr. Caruso likes his women with curves." "I'm not his woman," her smile was knowing. "Not yet, perhaps. But he looks at you differently. I've worked for him 8 years. I know that look. You're special. I'm a witness, a liability he needs to control." "If that's what you need to believe." She patted my hand, her fingers warm and calloused. "Men like Mr. Caruso don't bring women here. This house, it's been empty since his sister lived here years ago. But for you, he had it opened, cleaned, prepared in hours. That means something." I wanted to argue, but she was already moving toward the door. "Someone will bring your clothes from your apartment this morning. Mr. Caruso wishes to see you at 10. Wear something nice. You're going into the city." Then she was gone, leaving me alone with coffee and pastries I couldn't eat, and the growing certainty that I'd fallen into something far more complicated than a simple protection arrangement. At 9:30, a knock at the door made me jump. I checked the window first. Marco stood on the path, holding several shopping bags with designer labels I recognized from magazine ads. I disarmed the alarm and opened the door a crack. "Your things from the apartment," he said, not unkindly, "and some new items Mr. Caruso thought you might need." The bags landed in the entryway. I rifled through them, finding my meager possessions, some clothes, toiletries, the photograph of my mother I kept on my nightstand, mixed with tissue-wrapped packages that contained dresses, shoes, and lingerie so expensive I was afraid to touch them. I chose one of the dresses, a simple emerald green sheath that fit perfectly, as if someone had known my exact measurements. The shoes were Italian leather, comfortable despite their height. When I looked in the mirror, I almost didn't recognize the woman staring back. I looked like I belonged in a place like this. The illusion was almost convincing. Marco returned at exactly 10, his expression unreadable as he assessed my appearance. "Good. The car is waiting." The car was a black Mercedes with tinted windows and bulletproof glass. I could tell by the thickness when Marco opened the rear door. Dante sat in the back seat, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a year of my wages, scrolling through his phone with casual elegance. He glanced up as I slid in beside him, and something flickered in his eyes. "Green suits you," he said simply. "It brings out the gold in your eyes." I hadn't known my eyes had gold in them. I clasped my hands in my lap to keep them from shaking. "Where are we going?" "Breakfast, then shopping, then lunch at a place where we'll be seen by the right people." He pocketed his phone as the car began to move, smooth as silk. "You need to understand how this works, Emma. As of this morning, every major player in the city knows you're under my protection. They know you're accompanying me publicly. What they don't know is why, and that uncertainty works in our favor." "How?" "Because it makes you valuable, untouchable. Anyone who harms you insults me directly, And no one is foolish enough to do that without very good reason. He shifted slightly, angling toward me. But you need to play the part convincingly. Can you do that? What part exactly am I playing? My companion. My interest. Someone I've chosen to keep close. His eyes held mine. Someone I'm protecting because I want to, not because I have to. Heat crept up my neck. And what does that involve? In public? You stay near me. You let me touch you. Nothing inappropriate. Just small gestures that indicate intimacy. A hand on your back, your elbow. You smile, laugh at my jokes, look at me like I'm the only person in the room. His voice was matter of fact, like he was describing a business transaction. In private, you answer my questions about that night. You help me identify who might have had access to that table. You trust me to keep you safe. And if I can't do that, can't pretend to be whatever you want me to be, then whoever poisoned me will assume you know something dangerous. They'll come for you, Emma, and I might not be there to stop them. He leaned closer, close enough that I could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes. Smell that dark cologne. I don't want that. Despite what you might think, I don't enjoy putting innocence in danger. Then let me go. Send me away somewhere safe, somewhere far from here. There is nowhere far enough. His hand moved to my face, fingers gentle as they traced my jawline. The gesture was so unexpected, so intimate, that I froze. Whoever did this has resources, connections. If they want you dead, distance won't save you. Only I can do that. Only my protection, my reputation, my power. Do you understand? I nodded, not trusting my voice. His touch lingered a moment longer, then withdrew. Good. Now let's practice. Smile at me, Emma. Like you're happy to be here. I tried. It felt like a grimace. Better, he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. We'll work on it. The restaurant he chose was in the heart of the city, all glass and steel with a view of the harbor. Heads turned as we entered, whispers following in our wake. Dante's hand rested on the small of my back, possessive and warm through the thin fabric of my dress. The maitre d' practically bowed as he led us to a private table by the windows. Mr. Caruso, such a pleasure. And who is this lovely companion? Emma, Dante said simply, pulling out my chair himself. She'll be joining me frequently from now on. I trust that won't be a problem? Of course not, sir. Whatever you desire. We ordered, or rather, Dante ordered for both of us, dishes I'd never heard of in French and Italian. Wine arrived, red as blood in crystal glasses. He tasted it, approved, and the sommelier poured for us both before disappearing. You're tense, Dante observed quietly. Relax. No one here will harm you. How can you be sure? Because they're all terrified of me. He said it without arrogance, simple fact. See the man in the corner, the one trying not to stare? He owns 3 restaurants in the district. Pays me protection money every month. The woman at the bar? Her husband supplies my import business. The couple by the door? Their son works in my organization. They're all here because I allow it. I looked around the restaurant with new eyes, seeing the careful distance other diners maintained. The way staff moved with extra deference when they approached our table. This wasn't just a meal, it was a display of power, of ownership, of me. Why are you really doing this? I asked suddenly. You could have had me killed, made the problem disappear. Why go to all this trouble? He was quiet for a long moment, swirling wine in his glass. You saved my life. Where I come from, that creates a debt, an obligation. I protect what's mine, Emma, and as of last night, you became mine. I'm not a possession. No. His eyes met mine with unexpected intensity. You're not. You're a puzzle I haven't solved yet, a woman who saw poison and reacted without hesitation, who walked into my home knowing what I am and didn't flinch. You're either very brave or very foolish, and I haven't decided which. Can't I be both? A smile tugged at his lips, genuine this time. Perhaps. We'll see. Our food arrived. Elaborate presentations that looked too beautiful to eat. Dante watched me take the first bite, something almost predatory in his gaze. I forced myself to eat slowly, to pretend this was normal, that I dined with dangerous men in expensive restaurants every day. Tell me about the restaurant, he said after a while. Élysée. How long did you work there? 3 months. Since my mother died and I needed the money for her medical bills. Medical bills? Cancer. She fought for 2 years, but I stopped, not wanting to share this with him. It doesn't matter. She's gone now. It matters. His hand covered mine on the table, warm and strong. To anyone watching, it looked like comfort, intimacy. You're alone. No family, no support system. That's why you needed the job, why you couldn't afford to lose it, why you've never learned to be anything but invisible. The accuracy of his assessment stole my breath. How do you? I make it my business to know things. About threats, about opportunities, about people who interest me. His thumb stroked across my knuckles, a gesture that sent unwanted heat through my veins. You interest me, Emma, very much. I pulled my hand away, needing distance. Because I saved you. Because you saw what others missed. Because you kept the evidence instead of disposing of it. Because you came to me instead of running. He leaned back, that dangerous smile playing at his lips. And because when I look at you, you look back. Most people can't hold my gaze for more than a few seconds. You've been staring at me like you're trying to figure out how to kill me since we sat down. I'm not. But I was. I had been cataloging exits, weapons, ways to escape if this went wrong. Old habits from a childhood spent with a father who'd taught me to always have an exit strategy before he'd abandoned us. You're a survivor, Dante said softly. Like recognizes like, Emma. That's why this will work. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. We need to go. Now, what's wrong? They found your apartment. He was already standing, throwing cash on the table. Someone broke in an hour ago. Tore the place apart looking for something. My blood ran cold. Looking for what? Evidence. Information. You, his hand found my elbow, guiding me toward the exit where Marco already waited by the car. Whatever you saw that night, whoever poisoned me, they know you're a loose end, and they're trying to tie you off. The car ride back to Villa Rosa was silent, except for the rapid-fire Italian conversation between Dante and Marco. I caught words here and there: search, security, traitor, but most of it was too fast to follow. My mind raced with images of my tiny apartment destroyed, strangers rifling through my few possessions, looking for me. They would have found nothing. I owned nothing worth taking, nothing that could reveal where I'd gone. But the message was clear. They knew who I was. They knew I'd been there, and they wanted me silenced. When we reached the villa, Dante's hand closed around mine as we walked to the guest house. His grip was firm, almost painful, and when we were inside with the door locked behind us, he turned to face me with something raw in his expression. This is real now, he said quietly. This isn't just protection, isn't just cover story. Someone wants you dead, Emma, and they won't stop until they succeed, or I stop them first. So what do? We find them before they find you. He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. And you stay close to me, closer than you've ever been to anyone. Because the moment you're out of my sight, you're vulnerable. Do you understand? I nodded, my heart hammering against my ribs. Good. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheek in a gesture that felt too intimate, too real. I won't let them hurt you, I promise you that. It should have felt like comfort. Instead, it felt like a collar snapping closed around my neck, beautiful and suffocating all at once. 3 days passed in a blur of carefully orchestrated public appearances and private interrogations. Dante kept me close, so close I could map the scar on his cheekbone with my eyes closed. Memorize the cadence of his breathing when he was angry versus when he was merely calculating. We dined at exclusive restaurants, where men in expensive suits nodded respectfully, and women watched me with barely concealed envy or hostility. We attended a gallery opening where abstract paintings sold for 6 figures, and Dante's hand never left the small of my back. We walked through a street market where vendors called out greetings, and Dante bought me fresh flowers like we were normal people on a normal date. But nothing about this was normal. Every night, we returned to the villa, and Father Antonio would join us in Dante's study, pulling out photographs, documents, lists of names. They'd ask me the same questions in different ways. Who had I seen at the restaurant that night? Had anyone acted strangely? Did I remember faces, voices, anything unusual? I told them everything I could remember. The nervous busboy who kept checking his phone, the kitchen manager who'd argued with Marcel about scheduling, the delivery driver I'd seen leaving through the back entrance just before my shift started. Marco's men investigated each lead with surgical precision. The busboy had been gambling, deep in debt, but his phone records showed nothing suspicious. The kitchen manager had an alibi for the hours surrounding the poisoning. The delivery driver was legitimate, his truck searched and cleared. Dead end after dead end. Someone on the inside, Father Antonio insisted during one late-night session, his kind face creased with frustration. Someone who knew Dante's schedule, his preferences. This wasn't random. Then we look closer to home, Dante said quietly, dangerously. His eyes found mine across the desk. Emma, you should rest. This doesn't concern you. But it did concern me. Every day that passed without answers was another day that phantom assassin stayed free, another day I remained trapped in this gilded cage. So I stayed, curled in the leather chair by the fireplace, watching these dangerous men strategize like generals planning a war. It was the fourth night when everything changed. I'd been trying to sleep in the guest house, the enormous bed feeling more like a raft on a dark ocean than a place of rest. Around 2 a.m, I heard gravel crunching outside. Footsteps. Multiple sets. I grabbed my phone, ready to call Marco, when the alarm system blared to life. Someone had tried to breach the perimeter. Lights flooded the grounds, shouting in Italian. The crack of gunfire made me drop to the floor, heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. More shots, closer now. I crawled toward the bathroom, the only room without windows, and locked myself inside with shaking hands. Minutes felt like hours. The shooting stopped. Silence fell, worse than the noise. Then footsteps on the stairs, fast and heavy. The bedroom door crashed open. Emma! Dante's voice, sharp with something I'd never heard before, fear. Emma, where are you? Bathroom, I managed, my voice barely a whisper. The door handle turned. I'd locked it. Open the door. It's safe now. I forced myself to stand, unlock the door. Dante stood in the doorway, his suit jacket gone, shirt sleeves rolled up, and something dark staining his white shirt. Blood. Not his, I realized. He moved without injury, but his hands were stained with it. Are you hurt? He crossed the space between us in 2 strides, hands running over my arms, my shoulders, checking for wounds. Did they touch you? No, I'm fine. What happened? Who was... 3 men tried to breach the property. Professional killers. His jaw was tight, eyes blazing with controlled fury. They came for you, Emma. Specifically for you. They had your photograph, a description of this house. Someone told them exactly where to find you. The implications crashed over me like ice water. Someone inside your organization. Yes. The word was barely more than a growl. He pulled me against him suddenly, his arms wrapping around me like bands of steel. His heart thundered against my ear, his breath coming fast. They got within 30 meters before Marco's men stopped them. 30 meters, Emma. If they'd been better, if they'd been faster. But they weren't. I pulled back enough to look at his face. I'm okay, we're okay. His hand came up to cradle the back of my head, fingers tangling in my hair. This ends now. No more waiting, no more investigating. Tomorrow we force their hand. How? By making you irresistible bait. His eyes met mine, dark and determined. There's a charity gala tomorrow night. Every family in the organization will be there, including whoever wants us both dead. You'll come with me as my official companion. We'll announce our relationship publicly, make you too valuable to kill without declaring war on me directly. You want to use me as bait. I want to protect you by making the cost of your death too high. His thumb stroked across my cheek, the gesture now familiar, almost comforting. In my world, Emma, power is the only currency that matters. And tomorrow night I'm going to make it very clear that you have mine. What if it doesn't work? What if they try anyway? Then I'll kill everyone in that room until I find the guilty party. He said it so calmly, so matter-of-factly. that I believed him. But it won't come to that. Whoever is behind this, they're trying to weaken me, to make me look vulnerable. Killing you now, in front of everyone, would be suicide. They'll wait, regroup. And when they do, we'll be ready. I should have been terrified, should have demanded he send me away, hide me somewhere they'd never find me. But standing in his arms, his blood on my skin from where he'd touched me, I realized something that made my chest tight. I trusted him. This dangerous man who'd made me his prisoner had somehow become my only anchor in a world spinning out of control. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll do it." Something shifted in his expression, surprise, perhaps, or satisfaction. "You're braver than you know, or more foolish. You said you hadn't decided which." "I've decided." His forehead touched mine, his breath warm against my lips. Definitely brave. The moment stretched between us, heavy with possibility. His eyes dropped to my mouth, and for one insane second I thought he might kiss me. Wanted him to, despite everything. But he stepped back instead, the mask of control sliding back into place. "Try to sleep. Marco will post guards outside your door until morning. You're safe now." But as he left, I realized I didn't feel safe. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, and tomorrow night I would either learn to fly or fall into an abyss that would swallow me whole. The gala was held at the Grand Palazzo, a historic building that had been converted into an event space for the obscenely wealthy. Rosa had arrived early that morning with a team of stylists who transformed me into someone I barely recognized. The dress was midnight blue, almost black, with a neckline that plunged daringly and a skirt that hugged my curves before falling in soft waves to the floor. My hair had been swept up into an elegant twist. Diamonds, real diamonds, Rosa assured me, glittering at my ears and throat. "Mr. Caruso had these made for you," Rosa said, fastening the necklace. "They belong to his mother. He wants you to wear them tonight." I stared at my reflection, at the stranger wearing dead woman's jewels, and tried not to think about what that meant. Dante arrived at 7, dressed in a tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a classic film. His eyes widened fractionally when he saw me, something heated flickering in their depths before he controlled it. "You look..." He stopped, searching for words. "You look like you belong in my world." "I don't belong anywhere," I said quietly. "Then we'll make a place for you." He offered his arm. "Ready?" No, I'd never be ready, but I took his arm anyway and let him lead me to the waiting car. The palazzo was magnificent, all marble columns and frescoed ceilings, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across a ballroom filled with the city's elite. Men in tuxedos and women in couture mingled with champagne flutes, their laughter cultured and careful. But beneath the civilized veneer, I felt the danger. These weren't just wealthy socialites. These were the families that ran the city's underworld, dressed in Armani and pretending at respectability. Heads turned as we entered. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. Dante's hand tightened on mine, possessive and protective. "Stay close," he murmured. "Smile. Remember, you're here because I want you here. Act like you belong." We moved through the crowd, Dante accepting greetings and introducing me with casual ownership. "This is Emma. She's under my personal protection." The message was clear. Touch her, and die. Several men assessed me with calculating eyes, their expressions revealing nothing. Several women looked at me with barely concealed hostility. I was an outsider, an unknown variable in their carefully balanced equations of power. Father Antonio materialized from the crowd, dressed in his usual priest's garb despite the formal occasion. "They're watching," he said quietly to Dante. "Russo, Constantino, the Marchetti brothers, all the usual suspects. Let them watch." Dante's arm slid around my waist, pulling me against his side. To anyone observing, it looked like affection. I felt the tension coiled in his muscles, ready to strike. "Where's Marco?" "Positioned at the exits with our men. If anyone moves against you tonight, we'll know." A string quartet began playing from a raised platform. Couples moved toward the dance floor. Dante turned to me, his expression softening slightly. "Dance with me." It wasn't a request. He led me onto the floor, one hand at my waist, the other capturing mine. We began to move, and I was surprised to find he led well, guiding me through the steps with practiced ease. "You dance," I observed. "I do many things that might surprise you." His eyes held mine, intent. "You're doing well. They're all wondering who you are, why I've claimed you. Let them wonder. Is that all this is? Theater? Is that what you want it to be?" The question was loaded, dangerous. Before I could answer, a man approached, silver-haired and elegant, with cold eyes that reminded me of a snake. "Dante, how lovely to see you here. And who is this enchanting creature?" "Emma," Dante said coolly. "Emma, this is Lorenzo Marchetti, an associate." "Associate," Marchetti repeated, his accent thick. "Such a diplomatic word. Your father and I were great friends, Dante." Before his unfortunate passing, something dark flickered across Dante's face. "My father's death was no accident." "No?" Marchetti's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Perhaps you should be more careful then. Men in our line of work, we have so many enemies, and bringing a beautiful young woman into such a dangerous world." He looked at me, his gaze crawling over my skin. "It seems almost reckless." Dante's hand tightened on my waist, almost painful. "Emma is none of your concern. Of course. I merely worry for her safety. These are dangerous times. Why, just the other night, I heard there was trouble at your villa. Attempted break-in, wasn't it? How frightening for your guest. The temperature seemed to drop. Every instinct I had screamed that this man was involved, that his innocent concern was a mask for darker intentions." Dante must have felt it too, because his body went rigid against mine. "If you know something about that incident," Dante said softly, deadly, "I suggest you share it. Now." "I know nothing." Marchetti spread his hands innocently. "Only rumors. You know how people talk. But perhaps you should consider that keeping such a valuable possession requires more security than you currently possess." His eyes found mine again. After all, accidents happen, even to those under the strongest protection. He walked away before Dante could respond, disappearing into the crowd. I felt Dante's heart racing against my palm, his breathing controlled but shallow. "That was a threat," I whispered. "That was a confession." His eyes scanned the room, finding Father Antonio and making some subtle signal. He as good as admitted he's behind the attempts. The arrogant bastard thinks he's untouchable. Why would he want you dead? My father's territory, his businesses, everything I inherited when he died. Dante's voice was hard as granite. Marchetti wanted it all, thought he could take it once my father was gone. But I was stronger than he expected. Smarter. So he's been trying to undermine me for years. And now he thinks killing me will break you, I finished. Make you weak, vulnerable. Yes. His arms tightened around me. But he's wrong. Hurting you won't break me, Emma. It will unleash something he's not prepared to face. The music swelled. We moved through the steps mechanically now, both of us watching Marchetti across the room as he spoke with other men, gestured subtly in our direction. Planning? Plotting. "What do we do?" I asked. "We spring the trap." Dante's smile was sharp as a blade. "Marco is already moving people into position. When Marchetti leaves tonight, we'll follow, find out where he's keeping his hired killers. End this before he can make another move. And me? You stay at the villa, behind every security measure we have. This ends tonight, Emma. I promise you that. But promises in this world, I was learning, were written in blood and broken as easily as glass." The rest of the evening passed in a haze of forced pleasantries and gathering tension. Dante kept me close, his hand never leaving my body, marking me as his in every gesture. I caught glimpses of Marco positioning men near exits, saw Father Antonio in quiet conversation with people I didn't recognize. The trap was being set, pieces moving into place for a confrontation that would come after the music stopped and the civilized masks came off. Around 11, Marchetti made his exit with a small entourage. Dante watched him go with predatory focus. "It's time," he said quietly. He turned to me, his hand cupping my face with unexpected gentleness. "Marco will take you back to the villa." Lock yourself in the guest house and don't open the door for anyone except me. Do you understand? Be careful, I whispered, the words escaping before I could stop them. Something in his expression softened. I'm always careful. But tonight, I have a reason to come back alive. His thumb brushed across my lips, so quickly I almost missed it. Then he was gone, moving through the crowd with Father Antonio and several other men, leaving me standing alone in my borrowed finery and dead woman's jewels. Marco appeared at my elbow. Time to go, miss. The ride back to Villa Rosa felt longer than it should have. I kept checking my phone, waiting for news, for anything. Marco's expression revealed nothing as he walked me to the guest house, checked the rooms personally, and set the alarm. He'll be back by morning, Marco said gruffly. Dante doesn't lose, but everyone loses eventually, I thought as he left. Everyone's luck runs out. I changed out of the gown, washed off the makeup, removed the diamonds and placed them carefully in their velvet box. Then I sat on the edge of that enormous bed and waited, watching the clock tick past midnight, past 1, past 2 in the morning. At 3:15, I heard the car. Footsteps on gravel, fast and purposeful. The alarm disengaged. The door opened. I flew down the stairs to find Dante standing in the entrance, blood on his knuckles, his tuxedo jacket gone, his shirt torn, but alive. He was alive. It's done, he said simply. Marchetti confessed before he died. His men are either dead or in custody. You're safe now, Emma. It's over. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt the strangest sense of loss. As if the end of the danger meant the end of everything else too. The end of needing his protection. The end of staying close. The end of mattering to someone powerful enough to keep the monsters at bay. What happens now? I asked. He moved toward me slowly, like he was approaching something wild that might bolt. That depends on you. On me? You're free to go. I'll give you money, set you up somewhere safe. You can start over, be anyone you want to be. No one will touch you. I'll make sure of that. He stopped an arm's length away. Or you can stay. My heart hammered. Stay? Here. With me. His hand reached out, tentative, and brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. This started as protection, as necessity. But somewhere along the way, it became something else. At least for me. You're not just a responsibility anymore, Emma. You're... He stopped, searching for words. You're the only person who looks at me and sees a man instead of a monster. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you. The confession hung between us, raw and honest. I thought about my empty apartment, my invisible life, the years stretching ahead with nothing but survival to show for them. And I thought about these past days, feeling seen for the first time, mattering to someone, being protected by arms that made me feel safe instead of trapped. If I stay, I said slowly, I need it to be real. Not pretend, not for show. Real. It's already real. He closed the distance between us, his hands framing my face. It's been real since the moment you knocked that glass from my hand. You saved my life, Emma. Let me spend the rest of mine proving I'm worth saving. When he kissed me, it felt like falling and flying at the same time. Terrifying and exhilarating and inevitable. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me close, and I melted into him, into this dangerous man who'd somehow become my salvation instead of my destruction. Tomorrow would bring new complications, new challenges. But tonight, in the darkness of Villa Rosa, I chose to stay in the cage that no longer felt like a prison. I chose him. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of the main villa, my kitchen now, not the guest house, preparing coffee the way Dante liked it. Strong, black, with just a hint of sugar. Dawn light filtered through the windows, painting everything gold, and I found myself smiling at the simple domesticity of the moment. How strange that this had become my life. Mornings in a house that no longer felt like a museum, beside a man who'd somehow transformed from captor to protector, to something I was still learning to name, love, perhaps, though that word felt too small for what had grown between us. The past 6 months had been an education in Dante's world. I'd learned to read the subtle shifts in his expression that warned of danger. to recognize which phone calls required privacy and which ones meant business was good. I'd learned that Father Antonio told terrible jokes, that Marco had a soft spot for stray cats, and that Rosa cried at romantic movies when she thought no one was watching. I'd also learned that Dante Caruso, feared by half the city's underworld, made breakfast on Sundays, sang off-key in the shower, and sometimes woke from nightmares that left him shaking until I wrapped my arms around him and reminded him he wasn't alone. "You're thinking too loud," his voice rumbled from the doorway. He stood there in a white t-shirt and dark pajama pants, hair mussed from sleep, looking more human than the man in expensive suits who ran an empire. "I can hear the gears turning from here." "Just remembering," I said, pouring his coffee, "how scared I was that first night. How certain I was that I'd never survive this world. And now—" He crossed to me, arms sliding around my waist from behind, chin resting on my shoulder. "Now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." I leaned back against him, solid and warm. "Does that make me crazy? It makes you mine." His lips brushed my temple, which, yes, might be a form of insanity. The coffee forgotten, I turned in his arms to face him. The scar on his cheekbone caught the morning light, and I traced it with my fingertip, a gesture that had become habit, ritual. "I never asked how you got this. A knife fight when I was 16. My father's enemies thought killing his son would send a message." His hand covered mine, pressing it to his face. "They were wrong. It only made me stronger, meaner." "I don't think you're mean. You haven't seen all of me yet." But his eyes were soft when he said it, vulnerable in a way he only allowed behind closed doors, away from the men who needed him to be invincible. "Some parts of my world, Emma, they're dark, ugly. I've done things that would make you run if you knew." "Then don't tell me." I pulled his face down to mine, kissing him gently. "I know enough. I know you're dangerous, that you've hurt people, probably killed people. I'm not naive about what you do. But I also know you've never hurt me, never lied to me, and you've given me something I never had before. A place to belong. You could have belonged anywhere." "No." I cut him off firmly. "I was invisible before you, a ghost moving through life, barely existing. You saw me, Dante. Really saw me. How could I not fall in love with that?" The words hung between us, the first time either of us had said them aloud. His eyes widened fractionally, something raw and unguarded flashing across his face. "Say it again," he demanded, his voice rough. "I love you." Easier the second time, natural as breathing. "I love you, Dante Caruso, and I choose to stay in this world with you. Not because I'm trapped, but because this is where I want to be." He kissed me then, deep and claiming, and I lost myself in it, in him. Until Rosa's polite cough from the doorway made us break apart. "Breakfast will be ready in 20 minutes, she announced, studiously not looking at us. And Father Antonio called. "He's on his way with news about the Constantino situation." Dante's expression shifted. "Business replacing intimacy. Tell him to use the study entrance. I don't want Emma involved in this." "I'm already involved," I protested. "I live here. I'm part of your life. You can't protect me from everything." "I can try." But he was smiling slightly, acknowledging the argument we'd had a dozen times. I wasn't content to be a kept woman, ignorant of the business that funded our life. I'd started sitting in on some meetings, learning the legitimate side of Dante's empire, the import businesses, the real estate holdings, the investments that looked clean on paper even if their origins were murky. I'd never be part of the violence, the criminal operations. That was a line we'd both agreed on. But I could understand his world without being swallowed by it. Father Antonio arrived as promised, his expression grave. We gathered in Dante's study, the room where this had all begun, where I'd stood 6 months ago holding a poisoned glass and not knowing my life was about to transform completely. "The Constantino family wants to meet," Father Antonio said without preamble. "They've heard about Emma, about your relationship. They want to discuss terms for a treaty." "Why?" Dante's voice was suspicious. "We've been at a stalemate for years. What changed? You changed." Father Antonio's eyes flickered to me. "You have something worth protecting now, something vulnerable. They see an opportunity." Ice crawled down my spine. "An opportunity for what?" "Leverage," Marco answered, appearing in the doorway. He'd been doing that lately, materializing when danger was discussed, as if he'd appointed himself my personal guardian. They think threatening Emma will force Dante to negotiate from weakness. Then they're idiots, I said flatly. Threatening me would just make him burn their entire operation to the ground. Dante's hand found mine, squeezed. She's not wrong, but we should take the meeting anyway. Show them Emma isn't a weakness, she's a strength. That attacking her means declaring war on me, and that's a war they can't win. You want to bring her to the meeting? Father Antonio's eyebrows rose. Dante, that's... Smart, Dante interrupted. They're expecting me to hide her, to treat her like a secret shame. Bringing her openly, showing them she's under my protection and that I'm proud of that, it sends a message. It shows confidence, power. Or it paints a target on her back, Marco countered. The target's already there, has been since the night she saved my life. Dante stood, pulling me up with him. Emma, what do you think? Will you do this with me? 6 months ago, I would have been terrified. 6 months ago, I was a waitress who flinched at raised voices and made herself invisible to survive. But 6 months can change a person, especially when they're loved by someone powerful enough to reshape the world around them. When's the meeting? I asked. Dante's smile was fierce with pride. Tomorrow night. Neutral territory. The Monarch Hotel. They're Don, his sons, and whatever muscle they bring. We'll bring Father Antonio, Marco, and a security team. What do I need to do? Be yourself. Be the woman who saw poison and didn't hesitate. Be the woman who walked into a Mafia boss's house and demanded protection instead of begging for mercy. His hand cupped my face. Be the woman I fell in love with. My breath caught. He'd said it. Finally, after 6 months of showing me in 1,000 ways, he'd said the words, "You love me?" I whispered. Desperately, obsessively, probably unhealthily. His forehead touched mine. I told you that night. You became mine the moment you saved my life. But somewhere along the way, I became yours too. And I need you to know that before tomorrow, before you walk into that meeting. Whatever happens, whatever threats they make, know that I love you, that I'll die before I let anyone hurt you. Don't talk about dying. I gripped his shirt, suddenly fierce. We're going to walk into that meeting together, show them we're untouchable, and walk out the same way. Together. Do you understand? His laugh was low and warm. Yes, ma'am. The Monarch Hotel was the kind of place where presidents stayed and scandals were born. All marble and gold, with security that looked the other way when men in expensive suits gathered for meetings that never appeared on any official registry. Dante's hand stayed firmly on my lower back as we entered the private conference room on the top floor, his body positioned slightly in front of mine, protective even while projecting confidence. The Constantino family waited at a long table. Don Constantino himself, an elderly man with sharp eyes and hands gnarled by age. His 2 sons, both in their 40s with their father's calculating expressions, and enough security to start a small war. They rose as we entered, the gesture respectful but wary. Dante, Don Constantino greeted in heavily accented English. Thank you for agreeing to meet, and this must be the famous Emma. His eyes assessed me like I was livestock at auction. Beautiful. I see why you keep her close. Emma is here because she chooses to be, Dante said coolly, pulling out my chair himself before sitting beside me. Not because I keep her anywhere. I suggest you remember that. The older son, Roberto, if I remembered correctly, smirked. Of course. We meant no disrespect. We simply wanted to meet the woman who's captured your attention so completely. It's not like you, Dante, to be so distracted. I'm not distracted. I'm focused. There's a difference. Dante's hand found mine under the table, his grip firm. You wanted this meeting, Don Constantino. State your business. Direct. I appreciate that. The Don steepled his fingers. Very well. The territories you control in the Port District. We want access to the northern warehouses for our shipping operations. In exchange, we offer you 15% of our pharmaceutical imports and favorable terms on... No. The single word cut through the dawn's pitch like a knife. Silence fell. Roberto's face flushed with anger. You didn't even let him finish, the younger son, Antonio, protested. I don't need to. The answer is no. Those warehouses are mine. The port access is mine. And I'm not interested in your pharmaceutical imports, favorable terms or otherwise. Dante's voice was calm, almost bored. Is that all? Don Constantino's expression hardened. You're making a mistake, Dante. We're offering you a partnership, an alliance that could benefit us both. Refusing so quickly, it's short-sighted, especially for a man with new vulnerabilities. His eyes flickered to me. The threat was barely veiled. I felt Dante's body tense beside me, coiled to strike. But before he could respond, I leaned forward, drawing all attention to myself. Vulnerabilities? I repeated, keeping my voice steady. Is that what you think I am? I think you're a complication, Roberto said bluntly. A distraction that makes Dante weak. A woman playing in a man's world, not understanding the danger she's in. You're wrong on all counts. I met his gaze steadily. I'm not a complication. I'm a partner. Not a distraction. I'm a motivation. And I understand danger perfectly well. I saw someone try to poison Dante and stopped it. I've been targeted by assassins and survived. I've walked into this meeting knowing exactly what kind of men you are and what you're capable of. So don't mistake my gender for weakness, and don't mistake Dante's love for vulnerability. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Don Constantino looked momentarily nonplussed. She has fire, he finally said. I like that. But fire burns, young lady, and you're playing with matches in a room full of gasoline. Then I suggest you don't light any more flames, Dante said softly, dangerously. Emma is under my protection. She's part of my family now. And in our world, Don Constantino, you know what that means. Harm her, threaten her, even look at her wrong, and there will be consequences. The kind that end families and burn empires to ash. You'd start a war over a woman? Roberto sneered. I'd end one. Dante stood, pulling me up with him. This meeting is over. The answer to your proposal is no. It will always be no. And if you interpret Emma's presence in my life as weakness, then you don't understand me at all. He buttoned his jacket with deliberate precision. Come at me if you want. Challenge my territories, my businesses, my power. But leave Emma out of it. Because the man who threatens her won't live long enough to regret it. We walked out, heads high. Marco and Father Antonio falling into formation around us. I didn't breathe properly until we were in the car, pulling away from the hotel with Dante's security team following in 2 separate vehicles. That was either very brave or very stupid, Father Antonio said from the front seat. It was necessary, Dante replied. His arm was around me, holding me close. They needed to see that Emma isn't a secret weakness hidden away. She's a declared strength, an equal partner. Anything less would have made her a target. They'll still try, Marco predicted grimly. Men like that, they don't respond well to rejection. Let them try. Dante's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. I've been preparing for this since the night Marchetti tried to have Emma killed. Every business, every alliance, every piece of leverage I've built, it's all pointed toward this moment, toward being strong enough that no one would dare touch what's mine. What's ours? I corrected quietly. I'm not a possession, remember? His expression softened. What's ours? He agreed. Together. The retaliation came 3 weeks later, but not in the way any of us expected. I was in the villa's library, curled up with a book, when Marco burst in with his phone pressed to his ear, his expression darker than I'd ever seen it. Where's Dante? He barked. In the city, meeting with the shipping contractors. What's wrong? The Constantinos hit one of our warehouses, burned it to the ground. 3 of our men are dead, 5 more injured. His jaw was tight. This is war, Emma. Real war. You need to get to the safe room now. My heart hammered, but I stood calmly. I need to call Dante first. He already knows. He's on his way back. But until he's here, the windows exploded inward. Glass rained down like deadly snow. Marco threw himself over me, his weight crushing as bullets tore through the library. I heard shouting. the distinctive crack of gunfire from multiple directions. Marco's security team returning fire. Smoke began to fill the room, acrid and choking. "Stay down," Marco ordered, already moving, pulling me with him toward the door. But it burst open before we reached it, and 2 men in masks rushed in with raised weapons. Marco shot the first one without hesitation. The second got a round off that caught Marco in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. He went down hard, and suddenly I was alone, staring at a masked man whose gun was pointed directly at my chest. Time slowed. I thought about running, about screaming, about all the ways this could end, but mostly I thought about Dante, about never seeing him again, about leaving him alone in this dark world he'd tried so hard to protect me from. The man's finger tightened on the trigger. The shot never came. Rosa appeared behind him like an avenging angel, wielding a heavy candlestick that connected with his skull with a sickening crunch. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. She grabbed my hand, yanking me toward a hidden panel in the wall I'd never known existed. "Safe room," she gasped, blood on her face from a cut above her eye. "Now! Move!" We tumbled into darkness, the panel sliding shut behind us just as more gunfire erupted. The safe room was small, reinforced, with monitors showing camera feeds from throughout the property. I watched in horror as men in tactical gear swarmed the villa, exchanging fire with Marco's security team. Bodies fell on both sides. Smoke billowed from multiple entry points. "They came prepared," Rosa whispered, her hand finding mine. "This isn't just retaliation. This is an execution." "Where's Dante?" My voice broke on his name. She pointed to one of the monitors. A convoy of vehicles was racing up the driveway, moving fast enough to suggest desperation. The lead car, Dante's Mercedes, screeched to a halt near the front entrance. I watched him emerge, gun in hand, his face a mask of cold fury that made my blood run cold. He was magnificent and terrifying, moving through the chaos like a force of nature, his men falling into formation around him. I watched him kill 2 attackers with precise shots, watched him drag a wounded security guard to cover, watched him fight his way toward the villa with single-minded determination. He was coming for me. The battle lasted 17 minutes. I watched every second on those monitors, my heart stopping and restarting with every bullet that came too close to Dante. But slowly, inevitably, his superior training and knowledge of the property turned the tide. The attackers began to retreat, those who could. Those who couldn't were shown no mercy. When the last gunshot faded, Dante was already at the library wall, shouting my name. Rosa disengaged the locks, and the panel slid open to reveal him standing there, blood-spattered and wild-eyed, his chest heaving. "Emma," he breathed. And then I was in his arms, both of us shaking. I thought, when Marco called and said you were under fire, I thought I'd lost you. I'm okay. Rosa saved me. And Marco's hit. He needs medical. Already called. Helicopters inbound. But he didn't let me go, his face buried in my hair, his hands running over my back like he needed to confirm I was real. "This ends tonight. I'm done playing civilized. The Constantinos wanted war. They're going to get annihilation." "Dante, no." He pulled back, his hands framing my face, his eyes blazing with something primal and possessive. "They came into my home. They tried to kill you. There's no negotiation now, no mercy, no half measures. I'm going to erase them from existence, and I'm going to make it hurt." Father Antonio appeared in the doorway, his priest's collar askew, a gun in his hand that looked wrong and right at the same time. "We have 3 of their men alive. They're being questioned." "Good." Dante's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Find out who gave the order, who planned this, and where the rest of their family is hiding. Then prepare the men." "We move tonight. Dante," I said quietly, urgently. "If you do this, if you wipe out an entire family, there's no coming back from that. The other families will have to respond. You'll be starting something that could destroy everything you've built." "I know." His eyes met mine, and I saw the cost there, the weight of what he was about to do, the lives that would be ended, the blood that would be spilled. But they made their choice when they came for you. When they decided that hurting the woman I love was an acceptable strategy. So now I'll make mine. And I choose you, Emma. I choose protecting you over peace. I choose our future over their existence. I choose love over power." The words hit me like a physical blow. He was willing to risk everything, his empire, his position, his life, to keep me safe. And suddenly I understood what Rosa had said that first morning, about me being special. Dante Caruso, who'd built an empire on calculated decisions and cold logic, was about to commit emotional, irrational vengeance because someone had threatened what he loved. He was willing to burn the world for me. "Then I'm coming with you," I said. "Absolutely not. I'm coming with you," I repeated firmly. "Not to fight, not to be in danger, but to be there, to witness what you're doing in my name. If you're going to risk everything for me, the least I can do is stand beside you when you do it." We stared at each other, wills clashing. Finally, he nodded slowly. "You stay in the car, behind bulletproof glass, with Marco's best men surrounding you. The moment anything goes wrong, they get you out. Agreed?" "Agreed." The Constantino compound was in the industrial district, a fortress disguised as a manufacturing plant. Dante's convoy approached in the hours before dawn, when the world was caught between darkness and light. I sat in the back of the Mercedes, Rosa beside me for company, watching through tinted windows as Dante's men moved into position. Father Antonio had gotten the information they needed. Don Constantino and both his sons were inside, along with their remaining security force. Dante had given them one chance: surrender peacefully and accept exile, or fight and be destroyed. They chose to fight. The battle was brief but brutal. Dante's men moved with military precision, breaching walls and overwhelming defenses with superior numbers and tactics. I heard the gunfire, saw the muzzle flashes, and forced myself not to look away. This was the reality of Dante's world, the violence that funded the beautiful villa, the expensive clothes, the life of luxury I'd chosen to share. When it was over, Dante emerged from the building, his clothes torn, blood on his hands. He came directly to the car, opening my door with shaking fingers. "It's done," he said hoarsely. "Don Constantino is dead. His sons are dead. Their operations are destroyed. It's over." I took his blood-stained hands in mine, not flinching from what they'd done. "And now?" "Now we rebuild. Make peace with the other families. Show them this was about protection, not conquest, that I'll leave them alone as long as they leave us alone." His eyes searched mine, vulnerable and uncertain. "Can you live with what I've done, with what I am?" I thought about it, really thought about it, about the violence, the darkness, the blood on his hands that would never fully wash away, about the life I'd chosen, the man I loved, the future that stretched ahead of us. "Yes," I said simply, "because I know who you are when the doors close and the world falls away. I know the man who makes breakfast on Sundays, who has nightmares and needs to be held, who would burn empires to keep the people he loves safe. That's the man I choose, not in spite of the darkness, but with full knowledge of it." He kissed me then, desperate and grateful, and I tasted salt, tears or blood, I couldn't tell. Maybe both. Maybe it didn't matter. 3 months later, I stood in the gardens of Villa Rosa wearing a white dress that had been custom-made in Milan, diamonds at my throat that had once belonged to Dante's mother, and a smile that came easier now than it ever had before. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and amber, and a small gathering of witnesses, Father Antonio, Marco, recovered from his shoulder wound, Rosa, and a handful of Dante's most trusted people, watched as we exchanged vows. Not in a church. Dante's relationship with God was complicated at best, but in the gardens where I'd first walked as a prisoner and now walked as a bride, where I'd learned that love could grow in the strangest soil, that monsters could be men, and men could be monsters, and that sometimes salvation came from the most unexpected places. "I promise to protect you," Dante said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "To cherish you, to stand beside you against whatever darkness comes, to be worthy of the gift you gave me that night, when you saved my life and changed everything." "I promise to see you," I replied, tears streaming freely down my face. all of you. The darkness and the light, to choose you every day, in full knowledge of what that means. To build a life with you that's worth protecting. Father Antonio pronounced us married with a smile that suggested he knew exactly how unlikely this pairing was, and how perfect. Dante kissed me as the sun dipped below the horizon, and I felt like I'd finally come home. Later, after the celebration, we stood together on the terrace overlooking the city, the empire Dante had fought to protect, the world we'd navigate together. His arms wrapped around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder, and we watched the lights flicker to life in the darkness. "Any regrets?" he asked quietly. I thought about the waitress I'd been. Invisible, exhausted, surviving rather than living. I thought about the night I'd seen poison on a glass rim and made a choice that changed everything. I thought about fear and danger, and learning to love a man whose hands had killed, but whose heart had saved me. "Not a single one," I said, turning in his arms to face him. "You?" "Only that it took me so long to find you." His hand came up to cup my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone with infinite gentleness. "Emma Caruso. My wife. My salvation. My home. And you're mine," I whispered against his lips. "Monster and man, darkness and light. All of you. Always." We kissed as the city sparkled below us, two unlikely souls who'd found each other in the most impossible circumstances and chosen to build something beautiful from the ashes of violence and fear. It wasn't a fairy tale. There was too much blood for that, too much darkness that would never fully fade. But it was ours, and that made it perfect. The glass I'd switched that night sat on a shelf in Dante's study, empty but preserved. A reminder of how everything had started, of the split-second decision that had saved a life and transformed two more. Sometimes I looked at it and marveled at the butterfly effect of that single choice, how one moment of instinct had led to this. Love found in the last place anyone would think to look for it, in the arms of a monster who turned out to be a man, in the heart of a darkness that held unexpected light, in a world of violence that somehow made room for tenderness. And as Dante carried me inside, his laughter warm against my neck, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd choose it all again, the fear, the danger, the impossible odds, because it had led me here, home.